welcome back again to Cassim, and in this video what I wanted to do is I wanted to share with you 4 lessons that I learned from this remarkable human being, the college wrestler Zion Clark. If you've followed me for a while now, one of the things that you will know is that I've been on this insatiable quest to follow unbelievable human beings. I've been on this insatiable quest to basically understand why it is that some people are dealt a certain hand. They are born into poverty, they get into drugs, they get into the criminal world, they are born, their parents die and they end up in fostering, and yet they go on to start charities, they go on to become millionaires, they go on to start businesses, they go on to become some of the most remarkable human beings on this planet. And I've been like, why? How can you be born disabled and yet be a much nicer human being than somebody who has had all their limbs? It just didn't make sense to me. I didn't understand it, and it really frustrated me. And so I went out on this insatiable quest to understand what is happening. Why is it that all these people who start charities and who go and help people are all people who are suffered themselves? What is going on? And so I found incredible men and women and incredible stories, and I began to see that all of them had these patterns, they had these lessons, they had these common denominators. And what I wanted to do in this video is share with you one of those incredible human beings and 4 lessons that I learned from him, which I think can really serve you no matter where you're at in your life. So let's go through these 4 lessons. The first lesson that I would share with you is to understand that no one can control the hand that we're dealt. Some are born rich, some are born poor, some are born disabled, some are born dyslexia. I think there is a tendency for us human beings to sometimes think that we are the only people who have been apparently dealt a bad hand. We tend to have this belief system that we're the only people who feel like we have a disadvantage. But the reality is, no matter who you are on this planet, there are certain things that you could not have controlled. You could not have controlled what year you were born. You could have been born 100 years ago, you could be born today. Nobody can control that. You can't control the country you were born in. You can't control whether you went to private school or you went to a state school. You can't control what you got taught in school. You can't control what you were fed as a child. All this stuff nobody can control. And I think really the important thing is that you have to get to the point where you understand, okay, cool, Cass, I cannot really change whether I was born with dyslexia. I can't really change whether I was born blind. I can't really change whether I was born somebody with a big nose. I can't change that. I can't change the fact that I was born in Africa. I can't change any of that. But it's the same for everybody else. But now, and this is where the separation happens with human beings, what am I going to do about it? And this, looking at Zion's life, one of the things that's remarkable is that he took his disability and he said, look, I get it. There are some people who are born disabled. There are some people who are not. But what am I going to do about this? What other avenues are there? What can I do with what I've got? And this is something that you will have to come to in your life. You may feel like you're the underdog. You may feel that you're the victim. You may feel that God has somewhat singled you out to be the only person who seems to have all the odds against you. But the reality is you're not. Everybody has their own different problems. Even rich people. Some people, I've studied people who've been born into wealth, and I can tell you that they probably have more problems than somebody who hasn't. The level of if your parents are already wealthy and connected and successful and high achievers, the level of expectations in your life goes through the roof. If you're born into wealth, typically speaking, you will go to private school, which typically means that you will go to an all-boys school or all-girls school. That means you haven't had the ability to be able to integrate with people, with the opposite sex, which means that one of the things that I found is that a lot of people who went to private school have difficulties actually like conversing with the opposite sex. And this is clearly, relationships is like a really major thing for most of us, right? I think we can all agree on that. So I could go on and on and on. The lifestyle, the fakery, it's just like that lifestyle isn't what most people think it is. That being born in that environment isn't what you think it is. And so I would share with you that one of the first lessons that you really need to understand is that nobody controls anything that happens to them realistically the first kind of 7-8 years of their life. Nobody really has any say about it. You can't even control the language, the languages that you're taught or the languages that you speak. If you're born in China, you typically speak Mandarin or Chinese or whatever it is that you're going to speak. If you're born in Uganda, you will typically speak Luganda or English. Okay, you don't even have a choice about it. That's just what most people, the language that they'll speak. And it's the question is, what are you going to do? Are you going to settle for the fate? So where you've started, are you going to stay where you've started? Are you going to allow your disability, your handicap to keep you where you're at? Or are you going to use what you've actually gone through and use it as, actually, Cass, this was the first chapter of my life. Actually, Cassim, I needed to go through this so that I can be more empathetic, so that I can have the hunger, the drive, the passion to be able to go on and do, and the strength and the strength of character to be able to go on and do some of the hard things that other human beings are not able to do. That's a choice. You have to decide that for yourself. The second lesson that I want to share with you, which I learned from Zion, is this: when you have gone through something, use it and go back and help other people. Much of my work is based on and stands on the shoulders of a guy called Tony Robbins. And Tony Robbins talks about what he calls the 6 human needs. These are not wants. So essentially what he found was, after studying millions of people, he found that human beings, we had these needs. These weren't wants. We all had these things in common. And these 6 things were, number 1, the need for certainty. We all had this desire to feel secure, to feel like when we walk out of our house, we're not going to get stabbed. We have this desire to feel like we can get water, that if we go to work, that we're not going to get fired. We have that. That is a need of every human being. The second need is uncertainty. We need uncertainty because uncertainty creates variety. All of us, if our relationship is just all boring all the time, we will actually do stuff to deliberately mess our relationship up so that it can have a bit of variety, right? This may mean, we go to the same restaurant every year, but when a new one opens up, we want to go and try that. You see? Because it creates that variety. The third one is what he calls significance. Every single human being has this desire to feel a sense of like they're important, that they belong, that they're part of something, that they are, that they part of a family, that they're part of a team. We have this insatiable need to feel like what we're doing actually matters. The fourth one is what he describes as a need for love and connection. And what he explains is that we as human beings, we settle, most of us, for connection and we never get to love. Have you ever wondered, why do so many people have dogs and cats? Why? Because dogs and cats will never stab you in the back. They will never cheat on you. Dogs are literally loyal, and that allows us to have that sense of bonding, that sense of connection to something beyond ourselves. But really what we're looking for is love. But love comes at a risk. If you decide to go for love, you risk heartache, you risk divorce, you risk being cheated on. And so most people never really get to that kind of level. And the last 2 is what he talks about as most of us never reach. And the reason why we never reach these is because these are not material things. You cannot touch them. They're not tangible. They cannot be explained by science. These are far beyond, basically they go into the realm of the spirituality. And what he talks about is that most of us never get to this 5th and 6th need, which are, number 1, the need for growth, the need to grow, the need to develop, the need to feel fulfilled, the need to feel like we're making progress, the need to feel like we are changing as people, that we're manifesting, that we're going through a metamorphosis, that we actually, as a person, we've changed, we've grown. We've not just started off as a caterpillar and stayed a caterpillar all our life, but we've transformed and became the beautiful butterfly that we're capable of becoming. That we might have started off as an acorn, but now we've become an oak tree. Do you understand what I mean metaphorically? But we have that desire. And what he talks about is that the reason why we have that desire to grow is so that we can give to other people. And this is the level where most of us never reach. We never ever get to the point where most of us, where we can give, we have so much that we can give to other people. Because typically speaking, we don't learn this lesson until we're much later in our age. And so what ends up happening is we tend to look after ourselves and our family up until you're like 50 or 60, and then you haven't built anything beyond yourself, which means you have nothing to give. And so what I would share with you is to use your life, to use your experience, to use your handicap, to use what you've gone through and actually use it as a platform, as a vehicle to improving lives. If you have a disability, go on and you've managed to overcome it and you've gone to do remarkable things, go and inspire other people, go and encourage other people who don't feel that confidence, who don't have that drive, and use it to help them become higher, fuller expressions of themselves. If you've been somebody who's been on drugs all your life and somehow your parents were on it and then you were born into it and you've now managed to rise and come from it, go and back and teach people and share your knowledge and share your tactics and strategies of how you did it. Use your life as a vehicle, because we know from Maslow's hierarchy of needs that you cannot reach the highest echelons of who you are capable of becoming until you go beyond yourself. And this is really what I try to teach people. And most people don't get this until they're like 50 or 60. Life, if you observe life, I'm writing a book at the moment, and in that book, I talk about lessons that we can learn from nature. One of the lessons that if you look at all nature seeks to basically pass on and pass their life onto something else. Right? That's all nature is constantly trying to do, is constantly trying to basically ensure that the next generation survives. In other words, we're constantly sharing, we're constantly wanting to improve the next generation. We're learning from what we've done, from how we've lived as an organism, and then we're taking it on. See, what's the whole point of you living 60 years, learning loads of things, having loads of experiences, having all this knowledge, and nobody knows about it? You die, but the only people who know about all the knowledge and the wisdom and what you've learned about life is your kids. What's the point when millions of people across the globe could really benefit from it? So the second lesson that I would share with you is use whatever it is that you do. If it's being a mother, if you've had difficulties breastfeeding and you've managed to overcome it, there are people who are struggling, people who find it so difficult with breastfeeding. Go and help them. You don't have to be a millionaire, you don't have to be famous, but when you do that, you all of a sudden reach a very different level of living. The third lesson that I want to share with you, which I hope adds some value to you that I learned, is to understand that many times we can focus on what we don't have, but we forget to focus on what we do have. It is a tendency for human beings I remember I was once to settle for the negative as opposed to look to the positive. I was once reading a book, and the book was talking about the fact that so many people will be stuck in a traffic jam, and they'll be stuck in the traffic jam for like an hour, and later on they'll drive past and the traffic will start moving again, and when they get and they'll be frustrated in their car, and they'll be pissed off, and they'll be angry, and they'll be upset at the fact that the car that there's been traffic, and then later on when they drive past a car crash, they realize that the reason why the car crash was actually cleared up ages ago, but the reason why there's been continued to be traffic is because everybody stopped and looked at the traffic. Everybody slowed their cars down to look at the accident, to look at what happened, and everybody forgot that there was a sunrise that was happening. A sunset, sorry. Everybody forgot that there was a beautiful a sunset which was ahead of them, and they were just so focused on the negative. It's like the person who looks through the window and doesn't see the beautiful trees, but sees the specks on the window. And that's how so many people live their lives. We tend to focus on what we don't have as opposed to what we have. We live in England. We talk about, I don't have the money, I don't have the education, I don't have the connections, I'm not rich, I didn't go to Eton. My parents didn't have the right connections, I didn't go to a private school, I'm not clever, all of this stuff. And we forget, hold on a minute. There's libraries. We can learn anything, and libraries are free. We can do online courses. We can start part-time. There are investors. There are people who can mentor us. There's people who can point us in the right direction. There's companies that we can go and work for and work our way through the ladder. There's friends of ours who will, if they may not be able to help us, but know somebody who can help us and point us in the right direction. We live in a world where we've got access to the internet. We can FaceTime anybody. We can call anybody. We can travel anywhere on the planet within almost, I would probably say, within 3 or 4 days. We can travel anywhere on this planet, and we forget all about all this stuff. And we're like, yeah, but Cassim, but hold on a minute. Have you looked at all those things? I know that you may not have all those things. I know that fate might have thrown you a negative hand, but hold on a minute, you still got all the other cards. Have you played any of the other cards? And I found that many times, if you actually look at the cards that you've been dealt versus the cards that you actually have left, that the cards that have left actually are worth a lot more than had you been given the cards that were dealt to you. At the beginning of this video, one of the things that I shared with you is I was confused as to why it is that people who've gone through rape, people who've gone through domestic violence, people who've been to prison, people who literally beat people up are some of the most nicest human beings that I've ever met. People who've gone through fostering, people whose parents have divorced, people who've gone through domestic trauma, which is unheard of. It would make you cry why those people are some of the nicest people. They're the people who start charities, and the reason why they are is because the hand that they were dealt was actually some of the greatest, was some of the greatest, had the greatest gifts embedded in them, and the people looked for those great things, the strength, the vigor, the hunger, the experience, the empathy, and that is what has separated them from the rest of society. And I'm wondering whether you are focusing on what you have or what you don't have. The last lesson that I want to share with you, which I hope adds some value to you, which I learned from Zion, is this: break the mold and do things your way. There is a tendency for us, in fact, actually the first book I ever wrote, which you wouldn't know because the book isn't fully published yet, it's going through the editing process. In that book I give a story, and I gave a story about a fish. And I would like to share that story with you. There are these two fish which are swimming along one day. Young fish, they're having banter, they're having fun. The fish are swimming along one day, and in the opposite direction is an older fish. And the older fish is silently swimming along, having the time of his life. And as the two fish cross, the dads are still having fun, having banter. The older fish says to the young fish, he says to them, "Good morning, boys. How's the water?" And the boys look at the older fish and they're like, okay, weird, but okay. And the boys carry on swimming. And as he does, he just continues swimming in the opposite direction. Later on, as the two younger fish are swimming along, One is kind of puzzled and a bit like, well, what the hell's going on here? And his mate notices that he's a bit agitated, and so he says to him, "What's your problem, mate? What is the issue? What's wrong with you?" And he says to his friend, "What the hell is water?" And the lesson that I took from that story is very simple. If your entire life you've grown up in water, you wouldn't know what water is. If your entire life you've grown up with nobody ever going to university in your family, you wouldn't know. University might exist, but it won't even be an option for you. It won't even exist. I remember in the first book, I give a story of a man who I went to interview, a man who owns an IT company. And this guy, basically, I was interviewing him at his office, and he starts grilling me, and he starts saying, he's talking to me about goals, and I was asking him why some people never become successful. And he said to me that, "Cassim, one of the greatest lessons that I can teach you as to why people never reach their potential is because they never get exposed to anything else, which means that they never break the boundaries or the rules or the sort of the sphere which they've had created around them." He starts grilling me, and he's like, he starts off and he's like, "Last time you went on a holiday, did you fly first class?" And I was like, "Well, no, of course not. Why would I fly first class?" And he's like, "Why wouldn't you fly first class?" And he's like, "Well," and I was like, "Well, of course I wouldn't fly first class. I can't afford first class." And he's like, "Well, how much is first class?" And I was like, "I don't know." And I was like, "I can't afford it." And he's like, "So you say you can't afford it, but you don't even know how much first class is?" And he said to me later on, and we continue talking about this, and he gets on to, I start asking him about why it is that people don't know who he is, and he's not famous, and he's just literally employs hundreds of people at his company, and he's a millionaire. And I was like, "How is it that people don't know who you are?" And he starts talking to me about his private plane and stuff like this. And he said to me, have you ever been on a private plane?" And I was like, "No, of course I haven't been on a private plane. Why would I go on a private plane?" And he continues grilling me, and he's like, "Well, have you ever? Last time you went on holiday, why didn't you take a private plane?" And I was like, "Well, I can't afford. Like, why would I go on a private plane? That's for like rich people." And he was like, "Do you know how much it costs to charter a private plane?" I was like, "No." He was like, "Do you know what exists in private plane?" I was like, "No." He was like, "How about first class? Do you know what the difference is between normal economy class and first class?" I was like, "No." And he was like, "Even though those things are available to you, they don't exist in your world because you've never been exposed to them. When you get on the plane," he goes to me, "when you get on the plane, you simply walk straight past first class. You have no idea. You have no idea about the private lounge. You have no idea about the kinds of food that they serve. You have no idea about the towels, about the kind of service, about the quality of the food, about the stuff that is unlimited. You have no idea about the airport pickup. You have no idea about all this stuff. You have no idea about it. You don't even know how much it costs. So in your world, it doesn't exist." And this was so major for me, because I realized, and this is why I literally went out on this huge pursuit to basically be exposed to a lot of things. This is why I read things like the Bhagavad Gita, I read the Bible, I went to a church, I went to a Hindu temple. I started speaking to people. When I went to music festivals, I started going into tents where the music was completely different, because I realized, hold on a minute, some of the things that I would find meaningful and that would bring me the best joy and the best experiences, if I don't know that they exist, how can I ever be exposed to them? This is the major problem for me. And so the lesson that I wanted to share with you, and I want you to get, is that most of us, we will never ever reach our potential. We will never even get anywhere near the edges of our capacity, primarily because we don't know what our boundaries are. We don't even know that we're in water. We don't even know that we're in a matrix. We don't even know that anything else exists. There is a world that we've been produced, which is to good. This morning, every morning when I wake up, I listen to a motivational video. And this morning I was listening to Les Brown, and Les Brown said something which was profound. He said, most people, this is how they live their lives. He said, most people, they go to college, make a living, create a family, and then they die. He said, that is it. That is it. When they die, they write a gravestone and they write their name and the date of birth and when they passed away, and that is it. History will not remember them past that. Why? Because they didn't do anything of significance. They didn't use their gift. They didn't use their talent. They didn't go anywhere beyond where they're at. And so what I want to share with you is, if you want to do the remarkable, if you want to live remarkable, if you want to impact people, not only your family, but people within your community, people within your sphere, you are going to have to break the rules. You cannot be an ordinary person and live ordinary and do ordinary things and expect to be an extraordinary individual and have extraordinary results and have an extraordinary income and have an extraordinary health and connections with your family and income and wealth and career and spirituality. You can't have all those things and still be normal and still live that standard life. It doesn't work like that. So those are the 4 lessons that I learned from Zion, and I hope that they've served you and have helped you in some way. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? What are your thoughts? I'm always keen to hear from you guys. Maybe there's someone inspirational who you want me to do a video on. Who do you think? Send me a message, let me do the research, and I'll do a video on them. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.